Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome back to Great Movie Red Podcast. I'm your host, Gaston, joined by my co-host,
Jerryofdom.
and we are going to talk about Enchanted today, and we're going to talk about it as quickly as possible because it is really late at night, and I'm going on vacation. So,
And I am tired.
so let's start with the previewing thoughts. You want to start?
It had been forever since I've watched this movie, so I remembered absolutely nothing. So I was just hoping that it'd be an enjoyable thing, like everyone says it is, and how I thought I might have remembered it. But of course, it was when I was 8 years old, and I didn't care about a romantic comedy Disney movie.
Fair. Um, I liked this movie. I thought it was very underrated, so I was excited to see it again, compare everything. Um, yeah, I was pretty excited to see it. Obviously, we're doing this because of the forthcoming sequel, but I don't believe that's the very next one. More on that later.
Yeah.
So, Enchanted. Um, so, Enchanted tells the story of Giselle, who lives in the animated fairy tale kingdom of Andalasia. And she is not accidentally, she is forced to go to the real world of New York where there are no happily ever afters, and she has to adjust and find her prince for true love's kiss and all those things.
Yeah. Great time.
Yeah. So let's dive into our character study, starting with Giselle, who is portrayed by Amy Adams. She is a singing and dancing princess to be who ends up almost having her dream of meeting her prince a reality. Do you want to start with Giselle?
She's a fun character and deeper than you expect, and it's definitely fleshed out towards the end of the film. And it's just you getting used to the character and watching her progressively change. And it was an interesting thing to watch, and it was a fun story to watch as well.
Yeah, I agree pretty much wholeheartedly. Amy Adams is very, very fun in this role. She's very, very fun. Period. But she's very fun in this role. Super endearing, and she was born to play a Disney princess. She really was, and she does a great job.
Hmm.
So now let's talk about Robert Phillip, who is portrayed by Patrick Dempsey, a cynical Manhattan divorce lawyer who does not believe in true love, happily ever after, or fairy tales since his wife left him and their daughter. Um, Watching his character progression is so much fun. As he goes from this cynical character to uh, appreciating the the kookiness of Giselle and becoming more warm and everything throughout the film. He is my favorite character. He's very easy to root for, and he has some of the best lines in the movie. He is so much fun.
Yeah, he is definitely entertaining, especially during the singing part in the park. And
Mm,
watching him just be like super confused half the time and then enjoy it. And then he catches himself. He's like, no,
yeah,
I'm having fun. And
yeah,
it's very entertaining to watch. And he's fun more than you might expect he is.
true enough. So let's transition to Prince Edward, who is portrayed by James Marsden. He is a dim witted yet brave, heroic, and good hearted prince who ends up confused with the world of New York once he enters it. Why don't you start with Prince Edward?
He's entertaining to watch as he runs around New York, very confused as you go from taking down trolls to running around with a bus chasing after you. And it's very entertaining to watch and how he interacts with people around and how people watch him as he does his crazy things.
Yeah. Robert might be my favorite character, but Prince Edward is the funniest character, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
So many of his lines are quotable and memorable, and he is just so much fun. Um, and he means well. He means so well. It makes him very endearing. Um, so let's talk about Nathaniel, who's portrayed by Timothy Spall, a servant of Queen Nerissa who gets controlled through his infatuation with the queen and his own lack of self-esteem. He does Nerissa's bidding. Um, Timothy Spall is also pretty great in this.
Oh yeah. He's
um,
entertaining to watch in this film.
yeah, he's a lot of fun. So much about this film works so well, and it's this cast of really interesting characters with very strong performances. I can't think of a weak performance in the film. It's just good all
Yeah.
around. And Nathaniel, he has a pretty warm spot in my heart. I think he's very fun.
Oh,
Anything to add?
he was, as you said, fun. Watching him take on like little different roles to try to get things done the way he wants is also very entertaining to watch, and it's a fun time.
Absolutely. So let's talk about our villain, Queen Nerissa, who's portrayed by Susan Sarandon, Edward's evil stepmother, a sorceress and megalomaniac with a hatred for Giselle simply for being an obstacle for her to keep her power. I believe it's your turn.
Um, she is definitely, even though she is the main villain, she definitely does not feel like it till near the end, as she's just kind of putting orders. But she still has this empowering time every time she's on screen, even when she's not the main villain till near the end.
Mm. I think a huge thing comes to Sarandon's vocal performance is
Oh yeah.
really strong as Nerissa. It almost sounds like an impression of Maleficent from the original Sleeping Beauty, and with the parallels, it's pretty brilliant choice to have that casting going on.
Oh yeah.
Um, so we're going to talk about three more people. First up is Pip the Chipmunk, who in the animated world is voiced by Jeff Bennett and has vocal effects done by Kevin Lima in the real world. A chipmunk friend of Giselle who has no trouble expressing himself through speech and andalasia, but loses his ability to speak in the real world and must communicate by acting. Uh, Pip's pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine this movie without him, despite being a silent character for most of the film. Um, there's a lot to like about the role. And the vocal performances is fine and everything, but it's really the story writing around Pip that works so well.
Mhm. He's definitely used as like an objective throughout the movie as he is trying to divert the villain away from the main character. And so it's fun to watch how, he succeeds but also gets thwarted at the same time trying to do what's right.
Yeah,
And I think it makes him memorable because if he wasn't doing that, you'd probably forget about him.
probably. So now let's talk about Morgan Phillip, who is portrayed by Rachel Covey, Robert's 6-year-old daughter. Despite her father misunderstanding her and telling her otherwise, she believes in fairy tales. I think it's your turn to start.
She's a fun kid. She's not one of those annoying kid actresses that you see a lot of the times, but she's actually a character that's interesting and is funny at times. So I think she did a strong performance, especially for her age, and it was very good. It's very memorable.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. She does an excellent job. Good child actress. Um, has a lot of really cute moments and world building things through her eyes that works really well. And finally, let's talk about Nancy Tremaine, who's portrayed by Adina Menzel, a fashion designer and Robert's girlfriend. Um, so my turn. So Tremaine obviously is a reference to Lady Tremaine, the stepmother of Cinderella, and Nancy's role is interesting. At the start of the film, you understand her frustration with the situation, and then she's just kind of sits in the background. And then at the end, where you realize what type of person she really is, it's a nice little moment that puts a nice little bow on that whole subplot, which is
Mhm.
handled very well.
I think at first you feel a little concerned about what they might do with it, but in the end it works with the way that it needed to. And I feel like that was the most important thing to do with dealing with her character in the movie.
Yeah. So now let's transition to the effects and cinematography. And the effects are not bad.
Yeah.
Some things don't look great. I think Pip in the real world never quite did it for me.
And at the end with the queen.
Some of those shots weren't good, although some of it did look pretty decent, I
Yeah.
thought. There was parts
It was
that
a very
definitely.
mixed.
Yeah, when they went effect heavy, it was a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Um but those were really my only complaints, really, were those two
They did
things.
pretty well because it's like you're not expecting this top tier CGI, but like you are expecting it to look nice. And I think there's only like a few times where it didn't look too great, but most of the time it was good.
Yeah.
And the animation and the animated parts is
Classic.
very, very nice.
It
It's
looks
so
great.
enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. The expressiveness in that
Yeah,
opening is very well done. Um, and the
definitely an attention grabber.
true. And I actually really, really like the cinematography in this film. The shots, which are mostly references to Disney's other properties, is pretty brilliant. I really like the shots. There's a number that stands out in my mind, but the main one I'm going to focus on is the How Does She Know musical number. It's gorgeous to watch and look at. It's really well done.
It's so entertaining because you can look anywhere in those shots and there will be
Mm,
something happening, and it just makes it feel so more expressive and alive.
exactly. It feels alive. Absolutely. So now let's talk about the writing and score. And in my opinion, these are the two best parts of this movie. The writing is brilliant. It's Disney
It's
poking fun at
keep
itself.
together.
Yeah. Disney's poking fun at itself, making references to other Disney properties left, right, and center, but doing it in such a loving way that it never feels like a disrespecting of what came before, more of an honoring by
Yeah.
having all these connections.
And I feel like as we talked about like in our past ones about the Back to the Future, those sometimes get like you want a movie to be tightly webbed together, and in those movies it gets a little loose near the end
Mm-hmm.
and the second part. This one, everything is kept together. Everything is important. And the things that aren't important, they are made sure that you're known that it's not important and it's not
Exactly.
focused on for too long. And so everything in the writing just works and it's like perfect writing.
Yeah, it's so well done. And the score, amazing. I love the soaring music of Alan Menken's score, the background theme, the songs, True Love's Kiss, How Does She Know, So Close, are great. And then the musical cues from other Disney films, Happy Working Song I forgot as well, just all tie in to paint this story that once again it just lovingly pays tribute to what came before.
Yeah.
Even the score in the animated segment, which is Alan Menken's bread and butter, is doing score and music for Disney films. But the way he does it feels like how they did it way back with the Sherman Brothers in the 60s. It feels so good.
It's an enjoyable score that feels fun. It doesn't feel because it's supposed to be a happy, enjoyable, feel good movie, and the music definitely captures that. And like the low points, even the music, it doesn't get to where you're like depressive music. It's got a little step to it to keep you still in a good mood watching it.
Absolutely. Okay. Warning, heavy spoilers ahead. Here we go. In the animated fairy tale kingdom of Andalasia, Nerissa, the corrupt and ruthless queen and a dark sorceress, schemes to protect her claim to the throne, which she will lose once her stepson, Prince Edward, finds his true love and marries. She enlists her loyal servant Nathaniel to keep Edward distracted by hunting trolls. Giselle, a young woman, dreams of meeting a prince and experiencing a happily ever after. She, her chipmunk friend Pip, and animals from the forest work together to make a homemade statue of her true love she saw in a dream. Edward hears Giselle singing and sets off to find her. Nathaniel frees a captured troll to get rid of Giselle, but Edward rescues her. She and Edward are instantly attracted to each other and plan to be married the following day. Everything about this scene is so well done.
Oh yeah, it's very
It's fun.
enjoyable and fun to watch.
Yeah, the stakes are all excellent. Vocal performances are great. And True Love's Kiss, that song will get stuck in your head.
Oh
Da,
yeah, like
da, 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 da.
people like to be like, oh, expedition dumps and like all this. It's done so well because you're having fun watching the expedition dump,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't feel like a dump anymore. You're just
Exactly.
enjoying it, you're having a good time, and you feel good.
Yeah. An exposition dump is only a problem when it feels like the movie stopped for it.
Yeah,
I think of Age of Extinction when they have to explain the Romeo and Juliet law.
yeah.
Dumb decision. Hated that decision very, very much. Just stops the movie to explain why it's not. Anyway,
And no one cared about the humans in those movies.
I know. It's aside the point. So disguised as an old hag, where have we seen that before, Snow White? Nerissa intercepts Giselle on her way to the wedding and pushes her into a well, where Giselle is magically transformed into a live-action version of herself and transported to New York's Times Square in reality. Giselle, frightened and confused, quickly becomes lost and homeless. Meanwhile, Robert, a single father and divorce lawyer, prepares to propose to his girlfriend Nancy. Robert and his young daughter Morgan encounter Giselle on their way home, and Robert begrudgingly allows Giselle to stay the night in their apartment at the insistence of Morgan, who believes Giselle is a princess. And right away, Patrick Dempsey sells you on Robert and his
Yep.
story.
You
This,
know that this guy is a straight laced businessman, and you
mm-hmm.
can just tell, and he's not having it most of the time.
And he's got this like quick wit about him, and it's very sarcastic and like deadpan, which
And
really
entertaining.
sells. Yeah, because he's the opposite of Giselle in almost every way, and that's the
Yep.
point, and that's what makes it so enjoyable. Pip and Edward embark on a rescue mission to the real world, where they too are turned into live-action versions of themselves. Pip, now a real chipmunk, no longer has the ability to speak and only communicates through squeaks. Nerissa sends Nathaniel to follow and impede Edward. Nerissa appears to Nathaniel and gives him 3 poison apples that will put whoever eats one to sleep until the clock strikes 12, after which they will die. Meanwhile, after Giselle summons birds, insects, and vermin to clean Robert's apartment, Nancy arrives to take Morgan to school. She meets Giselle and leaves, assuming Robert was unfaithful. Robert is initially upset, but he spends the day with Giselle, knowing she is vulnerable in the city. Giselle questions Robert about his relationship with Nancy. She helps the pair reconcile by sending Nancy flowers and an invitation to a costume ball at the Woolworth building. Lots of stuff happen here. It's such fun.
Oh,
Edward in the street and Nathaniel in the street are 2 of the funniest scenes in the film.
no.
I assume you're looking for a princess too? No, I'm looking for a prince, actually.
And they're like, huh?
Yeah. And then, of
And then
course, in
stabbing the bus.
yes, no one stabs my bus. And then in this scene, we have the amazing "How does she know?" segment
Yeah,
as well, which is so well done.
it's so entertaining to watch.
So Edward locates Giselle at Robert's apartment. While Edward is eager to take Giselle home to Andalasia and marry her, she suggests that they should first go on a date and get to know each other better. Giselle promises to return to Andalasia after the ball that night, which Robert and Nancy also attend. Nerissa decides to come to the real world and kill Giselle herself after Nathaniel fails twice to poison her. At the ball, Robert and Giselle dance romantically with each other. Giselle and Edward then depart, but Giselle feels depressed at leaving Robert behind. Nerissa appears as the old hag and offers the last poison apple to Giselle, promising that it will erase her sorrowful memories. Giselle takes a bite, falls unconscious, and is plunged into a sleep with mere minutes to live. It's pretty
Yeah,
straightforward.
that's a lot of. It's entertaining to watch how you saw how Robert went from very strict and Gazelle to very like easygoing to their personalities really intertwining to each other, and it really just works between the two, and it makes you
Absolutely.
frustrated to watch her be with Edward, and you're like, now,
I,
now, I don't want this.
I love the slow dance sequence. It's beautifully shot. The song is great, and the dancing is
Oh,
superb. I love it.
it's very fun to watch that dance, and also just that realization of everything, and it all just clicking together at the end feels great.
Mm-hmm. So Nerissa attempts to escape with Giselle's body, but is confronted by Edward. Nathaniel, seeing that Nerissa never cared about him, reveals her plot. Robert realizes that true love's kiss is the only force powerful enough to break the apple's curse. Edward's kiss fails to wake Giselle, and so he and Nancy prompt Robert to kiss her instead. When Robert kisses her, she awakens. Infuriated, Nerissa transforms into a dragon and takes Robert hostage. Giselle takes Edward's sword and pursues Nerissa to the top of the building as the dragon intends to drop Robert to his death. Pip comes to support Giselle and helps defeat Nerissa by causing Nerissa to fall in the streets below with his weight and explode into dust. Robert almost falls as well, but Giselle manages to catch him and they share another kiss on the roof. I love Nerissa's line of, now this is an interesting twist on our fairy tale. I guess that makes you the damsel in distress handsome. I love that line a lot because
Yeah.
it is just poking fun at those things of the
Yep.
classic stories. Um, I really love when Nathaniel stands up for himself too. It's a great
Mhm.
scene.
It's very satisfying to watch everyone's character arc here really come to a close in a satisfying way.
Absolutely. A happy new life unfolds for everyone, showing Edward and Nancy falling in love and marrying in Andalasia, while Nathaniel, who stays in New York, and Pip, who returns to Andalasia, each write successful autobiographies based on their experiences in the real world. Giselle starts a very popular fashion design business and forms a happy family with Robert and Morgan in New York. Roll credits with
Oh,
Carrie
very
Underwood
good.
singing.
Oh,
I think this movie is interesting because while I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite movies of all time, it's super hard to dock marks on it.
yeah.
It's
It
just
does so
so
many
well
good things.
done. And I do think it's severely underrated, but we'll get to our overall rating in just a moment. Favorite and least favorite scene. Mine should be pretty obvious, so I'll go first. My favorite scene is How Does She Know?
Yeah.
I love it.
I think my favorite scene is. It's always hard to choose these things because I hate judging it. Um, it would probably be the. Just trying to think of like one scene that's in it. Probably right after the song finishes and Edward tries to go after her and just completely fails continuously, and it's really entertaining to watch
That's
him
pretty
just go through
great.
all that.
My least favorite scene. Now, this one is super hard for me to pick. Um, my least favorite scene. I did no prep for this podcast, so I didn't have time to think about it. My least favorite scene in Enchanted. Do you got one?
No, I think we're said with. There's not really a scene that made us go, eh.
This
Anyway,
is this is one of the most perfectly balanced films there is. Pacing and everything. And it's from a movie you wouldn't expect.
yeah.
If I had to pick one scene, I guess it would be how Giselle turns right side up, like how the physics on the well to the real world works, but that's such a minor thing.
I think for me, it'd probably just be like how quickly I felt like the movie wrapped up with the queen just turning into a dragon and then just
mm,
taking it. It felt a little quick,
mm.
and I think other than that, like it's solid.
All right, I am interested to hear what you have to say. What is your overall rating of Enchanted?
95.
Yeah, you and I are in the same boat. I've got it at a 94.
Mm.
It's hard to dock marks. It's just really well done.
Like it's not like a perfect movie that's 100 where you're like, dang, this is like amazing, but it's such a feel good. Just everything is done perfectly well.
Yeah, it's if you haven't seen this movie, I really do recommend it. It's very well done.
Mm.
And it's on Disney Plus, and you will find yourself having a pretty darn good time.
Hopefully, the second one's this good.
I hope so. The bar is much higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Like I figured my rating would be somewhere in the 80s, but it's just hard to dock marks. It's
Yeah.
really good. Next up for the Great Movie Ride podcast is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I'm pretty darn excited about that one. So
I gotta get tickets.
yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it very very much. For the Great Movie Ride podcast, I've been Gaston,
I've been Jerryofdom.
and we will see you in the movies. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.